Welcome to your November 2021 horoscope. My name is Cailin, and today I'm going to be covering the major transits for the month ahead using tropical astrology and the whole sign system. I strongly recommend that you watch your horoscope for your ascendant sign first and foremost because it will be the most accurate for you overall. Having said that, if you've got time to watch your sun and moon sign horoscopes as well, go for it because the sun sign horoscope will tell you more about your life goals and your career, whereas the moon sign horoscope will pertain more to your living circumstances and your family life. Now, I've got an exciting announcement to make. I am putting together 2022 horoscopes for all 12 zodiac signs. So these horoscopes will be super in-depth and you'll be able to purchase yours on sale if you buy during November or in the first 2 weeks of December. So these will retail for $16.99 US, but you'll be able to purchase yours on sale during that period of time for just $12.99. So please make sure you are subscribed to the channel and checking the website regularly because there will be an announcement once these are available for sale. And now let's dive into the November horoscopes. Hi Pisces Sun, Moon and Risings. Welcome to your November 2021 horoscope. Before I get into your reading today, I'm going to do something a little bit different and pull an animal spirit totem card just to see what energies are going to be with you for the month ahead. Okay, we've got the wolf here. Wolves are sometimes referred to as a lone wolf when they are operating by themselves, but wolves are also known for having a pack. So for me, this is coming through as you guys not settling for second best. If you're in some kind of relationship or in some kind of group where they're not really meeting your standards or they're not treating you with the respect that you deserve, it's okay to be a lone wolf for the time being. And on the flip side of that, if you have been a loner for quite a while because you've been scared of joining some kind of group or getting involved with friends, the wolf is here to say that it is okay for you to rejoin society and start socializing again. Whether that is in person or online, take that any way which you will. This is a general reading after all. Now, on the 30th of October, Mars will enter the sign of Scorpio, which means it will be transiting your 9th house. It will be in your 9th house for the whole month of November and all the way through till about mid-December. Mars naturally rules the sign of Scorpio, so it is extremely powerful in Scorpio. The 9th house is all about your world beliefs, your education. It represents your father or your father figure. And the 9th house is also connected to travel and tourism. Wherever Mars goes, this is where we can be putting a lot of our energy and effort into those matters that the house rules over. Now, given that the sun will also be in Scorpio in your 9th house, and on the 7th of November, Mercury will join the sun and Mars in your 9th house, this shows that you'll be putting a lot of energy and effort into your studies if you are currently studying. Now, Mars is quite an assertive planet, but it can also become quite aggressive in nature. So with Mars, Mercury, and the Sun all in your 9th house, this indicates that you may be having some challenging conversations, if not outright arguments, with either your father, a father figure, a teacher or a mentor, or someone who you respect or who has some kind of dignified position in society. Now, you may be arguing about your world beliefs or your spiritual or religious beliefs, and this is indicated by the fact that the 9th house rules over our belief systems. Now, Mars rules over your 2nd house, which is Aries. So you may be arguing with this individual or with more than one individual about your finances and your resources and what you are doing with your money. Now, on a different level, this can just see you working extremely hard on your education. Now, if you are a teacher, you may have a lot of teaching responsibilities that you need to attend to around this time. On a different level, you may be trying to procure your citizenship in a foreign country, or perhaps you're looking at obtaining a visa. There may be some challenges involved with this, or perhaps you've been pursuing this process for quite some time and now you're getting to the pointy end of things. On a different note, the 9th house represents coaches and mentors. So even if you're not having a disagreement with a coach or a mentor, they could just be pushing you really, really hard for the month of November. Now, Mercury represents networking with other people, and in your horoscope, Mercury rules over your 7th house, which is Virgo, and your 4th house, which represents your home and family life. So you may actually be networking with individuals from a foreign country or from a different cultural background to you. And this is represented by the 9th house. On a different note, you may be in communication with family members who actually live in a different country to you. That's another way that that can play out. And lastly, the 9th house represents seeing the bigger picture, and it represents our vision for the future and what we want to do with our lives. So with the Sun, Mercury, and Mars all transiting your 9th house, I imagine lots of Pisceans will be putting together a plan for what the next step is, or perhaps you are having some kind of epiphany when it comes to what you want to do with your life. Now, on the 4th or the 5th of November, depending where you live in the world, there will be a new moon in Scorpio at 12 degrees in your 9th house, and it will be in a wide conjunction with Mars in Scorpio, which of course is the ruler of the new moon. This new moon will actually be making an exact opposition to Uranus in Taurus in your 3rd house, and it will be making a square to Saturn in Aquarius in your 12th house. New moons indicate a new beginning or a new chapter starting somewhere in our lives. So this indicates that you may be putting a plan into motion for some kind of trip that you want to take. Maybe you are putting together an itinerary. In any case, new moons indicate us setting the intention or putting the plan into motion. Now, you may not actually be able to execute this plan for another 6 months until the full moon in Scorpio, or perhaps you'll be waiting 18 months until the following full moon in Scorpio. On a different level, this can see you enrolling in some kind of education program, or at the very least, you could be applying to get accepted into some kind of education program. Now, on a different level, you may be engaging the services of a new coach or a new mentor. Now, this individual might have a lot of Mars in their chart, and what I mean by that is they could be a Scorpio or an Aries, Sun, Moon, or Rising, or they could just be Mars dominant. Now, looking into this opposition to Uranus and this square to Saturn, this indicates that your choice in what you study or in the coach that you engage the services of, it may be quite eccentric. It may be quite an unusual choice. Now, with this new moon occurring in your 9th house, some of you may just decide that you want to travel or that you want to relocate to a foreign country. Maybe you have a fear of flying. Maybe you have a fear of being outside of your comfort zone. The 3rd house represents everything which is familiar to us. It represents the streets that we walk every day. It represents the shops that we frequent. It represents our local bank or our local doctor. The 3rd house represents neighbors and cousins and relatives and all that kind of stuff. So this opposition from the new moon in the 9th house, which is the house of adventure, I might add, being opposite Uranus in the 3rd house of, let's call it the 3rd house of familiarity, this can show there being a disparity between your desire to embark on a new adventure or to do something new, but you're needing to break away from the people and the places and the things that are familiar to you and that bring you comfort. Uranus rules over your 12th house. Once again, the 12th house is connected to our subconscious fears and our insecurities. So you may not even be consciously aware of how attached you are to these things that are familiar to you and that bring you comfort. Now, the 9th house represents publishing. So maybe you are writing a book or putting together some kind of report or communications piece. Now, on the 10th of November, Mercury and Mars will form an exact conjunction in Scorpio in your 9th house. Mercury represents communications and conversations with other people. And given that Mercury rules over your 7th house of one-on-one relationships and your 4th house of home, this can show you having an extremely important conversation with an individual who can give you advice about your finances and your resources. And I'm saying this because Mars rules over your second house, which represents your finances and resources. The second house also represents our valuables and our possessions. So maybe someone is giving you advice about how to sell these certain valuables that you have. In any case, the ninth house is connected to import and export. So if you are looking to start some kind of new business which involves the selling of goods, you can certainly receive information or advice from someone who is in the know in the industry. And that is because Mars rules over your ninth house, which represents speaking to an influential person or figure. Now, this conjunction between Mercury and Mars can see you having an exciting new business idea. And that's because Mercury represents information and Mars represents innovation. So when we combine these two together, and especially in a conjunction, this shows you having some kind of new idea, and it could be connected to what you want to do with your finances, your resources, your valuables, your possessions. This could be to do with networking with people who are in a different country to you. It could be networking with foreigners or people who basically had an extremely different upbringing to you. Now, on a different level, this new business idea could pertain to education, or you could be looking at becoming a coach or a mentor or a teacher yourself. Maybe you have certain skills that you can offer when it comes to your knowledge about finances and resources. With Mercury ruling over your fourth house of property and real estate, maybe you have some specified knowledge with regard to property, whether that is the selling of property, being a property manager, being an investor. Maybe you are really skilled at flipping properties. Now, on a different level, this conjunction can see you forming a contract or an alliance or partnership with another individual. And I'm saying this because Mercury rules over your seventh house, which represents commitments and promises and essentially deals that we do with other people. Now, in terms of the sort of person you may be collaborating with, well, they could have Mars or Mercury placed very strongly in their chart, or they could simply be a Gemini, Virgo, Mars, or Aries, Sun, Moon, or Rising. Now, on the 14th of November, Mercury in Scorpio in your ninth house will make an exact opposition to Uranus in Taurus in your third house. 4 days later, on the 18th of November, Mars in Scorpio will make that exact same opposition to Uranus. So I'm going to interpret both of these transits at once, especially given that they're just 4 days apart. In terms of when this energy will be most felt, you want to look at about the 12th or the 13th of November through till around the 19th or the 20th of November. So on one level, for those of you who are already enrolled in some kind of education program, this can see you deciding to change course really abruptly or change your major. If you're working on some kind of thesis, maybe you're changing the topic. Now, on a different level, if you have already been enrolled into some program that you haven't started yet, you may actually be pushing the pause button and deferring you commencing this program. Even if you're already studying, you may just be deferring for a semester or for a year or even for a couple of years. Now, on a different level, you may just be taking a leave of absence, and this doesn't necessarily need to be for several months or years. It could just be that something takes you away from your ability to study for maybe even just this week in time. So essentially, this combination of transits can have Mercury retrograde energy. So just watch your education studies very closely. The same goes for travel. If you are looking at international travel and if you've already got something booked, double check your dates, double check the terminals, double check the layover times and the time zone differences as well. That can be super confusing. And your flights just may be delayed, cancelled, pushed back, or whatever. So that's another thing to look out for. Now, another way that this transit can play out is that a collaboration that you have with another person may go awry. Now, obviously, in the previous transit, I was talking about you wheeling and dealing and signing up to do a deal with a new person or a new contact. I feel that the two of these transits are interconnected. So maybe you signing on to form some kind of connection or alliance or partnership with another person means that you actually have to break your promise or a commitment that you made to another person. So this opposition between Mercury and Uranus represents Mercury being the agreement, being dissolved, as shown by Uranus, which is the planet of divorce. And of course, Uranus is in your 3rd house, which represents contracts and negotiations, and it rules over your 12th house, which represents dissolving a situation or dissolving a relationship. So, don't be too disheartened if you have to give up one contract or partnership in order to foster this new connection or relationship. Now, lastly, with this transit, it doesn't necessarily mean that you have to, take one relationship over the other. It could just be that someone that you are dealing with in a business relationship or even in a friendship, they could just ghost you or be unavailable or uncontactable. Now, this can definitely throw a spanner in the works if you are in business together and you have some kind of time critical situation which requires you to commit to import and export services. Now, lastly, for the month, on the 19th of November, there will be a full moon lunar eclipse at 27 degrees in Taurus, and this is occurring in your 3rd house. Eclipse energy can be felt 4 to 6 weeks before the eclipse and 4 to 6 weeks after the eclipse. So you're definitely going to be, feeling this one from basically around the time that these horoscopes go live in October. So you may be experiencing restlessness, sleepless nights. You may be feeling quite emotional or even downright fatigued in the weeks leading up to this particular eclipse. Now, given that this eclipse is occurring in your 3rd house, this represents the ending of a chapter or a cycle. Now, the 3rd house is connected to our contracts, our relationships, friendships. It represents siblings, relatives, schoolmates, teammates, and colleagues. Full moon eclipses are essentially like full moons but on steroids. So a very powerful ending of a chapter is indicated with regard to one of these relationships. Now, it doesn't necessarily mean that you have to say goodbye to a friendship or a relationship. This can play out in a few different ways. Now, before I get into them, I just want to make a note that it is important to look at what the ruler of the eclipse is doing. So because the eclipse is taking place in the sign of Taurus, we want to analyze what Venus is doing. So Venus will be in Capricorn at the time of the eclipse, and it will be making an exact trine to Uranus in Taurus in your 3rd house. Trines are positive aspects. So this represents the end of a relationship or of a project which is actually going to be quite beneficial in nature. Now, the 3rd house also rules over communications. So maybe you've finished writing a book. Maybe you've finished a collection of photographs. So maybe you've got a portfolio which is now ready for circulation. On a different level, the 3rd house represents things like documentaries, and it represents giving a report, taking tests, taking exams, and it is linked to apprenticeships and education. Yes, the 9th house is as well, but they represent education in slightly different ways. So with eclipses, usually some kind of memorable event occurs about 10 days before or 10 days after the eclipse. Now, I don't want to stress any of you Pisceans out, because even though eclipses are very hard to predict in terms of how they play out, this one has almost all positive aspects going on. So with this trine from Venus in your 11th house, which rules over your long-term goals and dreams, to Uranus in Taurus in your third house, which represents self-made worth and projects. I see this as you finishing some kind of project, which could be a communications piece, or it could be something that you worked on in a small team of people, and now you can finally rest, because this may have been taking up a lot of your time. With Uranus ruling over your 12th house, maybe there were lots of sleepless nights in trying to finish this project. Maybe you were writing a book and you had a very stressful deadline to meet. In any case, I see this as you achieving some kind of success, especially because Venus rules over your 8th house, which represents your mutual resources. The 8th house is a money house in astrology, and given that Venus is in your 11th house, which is also a money house, and Venus itself represents wealth and abundance, I see this as you having some kind of successful financial outcome as a result of finishing some kind of project. Now, on a different level, with the third house ruling over our relatives and our siblings and friends and colleagues, if you have been experiencing some kind of discord in these relationships, this can finally be put to rest. And I'm saying that because the moon in Taurus in your third house will actually be trining Pluto in Capricorn in your 11th house. And Pluto represents something coming to an irreversible end. It is the planet of death and rebirth. So in one sense, if you have struggled with these relationships, but you thought that there was no hope, but you still want to continue in this relationship, this can see you finally putting your differences aside and burying the hatchet once and for all. And that is because Pluto represents the rebirth or the rejuvenation of this relationship. Both the 3rd and the 11th houses in astrology are connected to friendships. Yes, the 3rd house represents siblings, but the 11th house represents our older siblings. So maybe you have had a difficult relationship with an older sibling and you weren't able to see eye to eye. Now, given that this is an eclipse we're talking about, there may be some kind of peak event or discussion or argument, but this can lead to water under the bridge. Now, on a different level, if you have wanted to make an exit out of a relationship, whether this is with a sibling or with a friend or with a client, and you just weren't really able to see how to, navigate the end of this relationship, this trine from Venus in the 11th house to Uranus in Taurus in your 3rd house shows that you can have a swift exit from this relationship. And Uranus does things very cleanly. It's a clean break, I should say. It's like ripping off the band-aid. Now, on a different level, the 3rd house represents our mentality and our perspective. So if you have been suffering from bouts of pessimism or just seeing the glass half empty, this eclipse can lead you to having some kind of, download of information, which is basically like a shockwave in that it reprograms how you think. So you can switch from a pessimistic outlook on life to a glass half full attitude or perspective. And so Pisces, that's all I have for you for November 2021. If you enjoyed this horoscope, please give it a thumbs up. If you'd like to see more content on this channel, please hit the subscribe button. Enjoy your month ahead and take care.